Hello, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. This is the channel Ian the Reader. I'm Ian the Reader. I'm alive. I've been gone for about 2 weeks, which is not a crazy amount of time, but I feel like I've been really silent, not only on here, but also on like Discord and stuff like that. I have been sick. It has been awful. I got the got the Rona, and I am just now feeling human again. Yesterday was the first day I went out in a while, which was good. I liked being around people and seeing the sun. Got a haircut, which is cool. But I'm just trying to make myself get back on here and start filming, and we're going to see how this goes. So today, I wanted to talk to you all about some secret favorite books of mine. What I mean by that is books that I've never really talked about, but I really enjoy. I'm also standing today. I don't know why. I had like a sudden burst of energy yesterday evening, and so I reorganized my books, and I thought I'd stand for a video, see how it goes. I like the energy of doing this, so we're gonna see how that goes. But yes, back to what I was saying. Today we're gonna be talking about some secret books of mine, in that they are books that I love, that I've never really talked about because I read them before I got on BookTube, which, weirdly enough, it's been like 3 years almost since I got on BookTube. Time flies. But yes, I wanted to talk about some books that I love that I never talk about. So that's the video. I don't even know what books I'm going to be talking about. I'm just going to start looking at my shelves that are so nice and organized now, and we're going to talk about them. So let's jump in. Let me know if you've read any of these. I hope that you have, and if you haven't, you should. That's what I think. Got one. All right, so first up, we have Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. So very briefly, this is actually my favorite book. Is my hand not quite this big? I was wondering. Anyway, yeah, so I read this when I was a senior in high school, and it was my real introduction to literary fiction, and it blew my mind. So this is a story about a young boy whose father dies in the 9/11 tragedies. And I was just floored by this book when I read it. And it's one that I definitely feel like I need to revisit to see if it's still like one of my favorite books. Like I said, it was briefly my favorite book, not because any book immediately replaced it necessarily, but just because it was so different from anything I'd read, and really anything that I read thereafter for quite some time, that it kind of stood alone, and that like, okay, yeah, that's probably the best book I'd ever read, but, you know, then I read a bunch of other things in more like my typical lane of reading, and so it kind of drifted from my mind, but the more I think about this book, the more impressed I am by it, and it's one that, like I said, I really want to revisit. It's about this boy who not only, like, he goes through this tragedy, but he kind of sets out on this odyssey of sorts throughout New York, trying to get answers to this question that he stumbles upon when going through his father's things, I believe. So yeah, it's an interesting story also because it's kind of not like mixed media, but like there's pictures. You'll understand when you read it, but there's portions of the story where like it gets typed over a lot and like gets crazy weird and interesting, which I found so fascinating when reading it as well. It was a bit experimental. And so it's, like I said, definitely one I want to revisit, but I never talk about it. So maybe I'll reread this and do a review. Who knows? Next, we have Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. I love this book. To this day, I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's just like the most speaks to me kind of book ever. It's got magical realism, but only a little bit. Those of you who don't like magical realism, it's just like a touch. So don't let that, be a deterrent for you reading it. There's a really loud truck outside. I wish it would go away. Anyway, yeah, so this book is amazing for that reason, but really it's just the characters and the writing. Trent Dalton has such a unique sense of wonder that he brings to all of his books. There's just something in his writing that there's just this glowing admiration for life and joy and wonder and magic, but not like real magic, but like everyday magic, and it's just one of a kind. His writing is truly stellar in that way. There are some beautiful characters here. This is a coming of age story set in the 80s, I believe, maybe it's the 70s. In Australia, and it follows this young boy named Eli, but also his brother, Gus, and they have some stuff that is tough that they go through, but it is just the most like heartwarming, heart-wrenching, beautiful, wonderful story. It's one that I will always think about fondly, and there's just this book holds a very special place in my heart, and I feel things for this book that I don't feel for really any others. I wouldn't say it's my favorite book ever, but it's definitely one of my all-time favorite books. So if you have not read Trent Dalton, this book is great. I've also read All Our Shimmering Skies, which is wonderful. I have yet to read Love Stories, which is actually such a cool idea. It's a collection of love stories that he was told while sitting on a corner with a typewriter, that he just had a sign and asked people to come and tell him a love story. And then he wrote them down and put them in that book, which I've got to read that, but I haven't yet. So, yeah, definitely recommend Boy Swallows Universe and Trent Dalton in general. Next up, I did want to talk about my second favorite book of all time, either my second or third. I haven't decided. I'll actually be putting out a top 10 books of all time list very soon, so be looking out for that. But this is in my top 3 books of all time. It fluctuates between 2 and 3, and that book is I Know This Much Is True by Wally Lamb. Oh, I love this book so much. And it's hard to even articulate why. It's a story that is so incredible. In this book, we follow a man who is going through a sort of midlife crisis, but it's really prompted because his twin brother, who has a lot of mental health issues, does something crazy, which I'll go ahead and tell you. It happens in like literally the first page, I think. His brother, like I said, has a lot of mental health things going on, and a lot of mental illness. And he goes to a library and cuts his own hand off. And things go from there. That's really the catalyst for the story, but this is really an epic family saga, not only about him and his brother, kind of going back and forth in time, but also about his grandfather. And oh my gosh, this is just such an incredible story. It's weirdly like a coming-of-age story in some ways, but not. It's just about a man trying to find himself and redeem himself, and asking a lot of questions about, what legacy means, and whether or not you can move on from the dysfunctions that you endured in your family and the baggage that came with that. So I love this book so much. It is very long. It might not look that long from just like the size of it in the video, but it's very close to 900 pages, and there is not currently an audiobook for it. There's one, but it's like abridged. And like I said, this is a 900-page book, and the audiobook's like 5 hours. So don't listen to it, because you'll get literally like less than a quarter of the story. So please read this book. You'll have to physically read it or do an ebook, but it's totally worth it. It's an incredible book. There is a mini-series. I don't know if it's faithful. I've heard it's good. It's got Mark Ruffalo, and he plays both of the twins, which is so cool. And I like Mark Ruffalo, so there's that. But this is a good book. That's all I can say. Watch the show if you want to. I don't know if it's good, but the book is amazing. Next is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This book is great. It's so good. It's like the best classic to read if you don't like classics, or if you want to get into classics but you can't. It is short, which is nice, and the writing is exquisite. Like, my God. It's definitely one that is very approachable. Like, it doesn't feel like super complex and like gonna be super confusing, but at the same time it's luscious and stunning and beautiful and haunting. We follow a man who is despicable, and he kind of gets gifted this magical painting that he kind of manifests and siphons all of his evil and aging and inner qualities into the painting. So he doesn't age, he just gets like more beautiful. But the painting slowly becomes monstrous. And it is a horror story that's not like super horrifying, but just very interesting, talking about, the facades we put on and the depths of human sickness. Even when things look beautiful on the outside, the inside can be a completely different story. That kind of thing. I really like this book. The characters are very interesting and complex. The writing is, like I said, really stunning. There were so many passages in here, like as I was reading it, I was highlighting and being like, oh my gosh, that's like one of the most beautiful lines I've ever read. But it's also, like I said, super approachable. It does not feel bloated in any way or over complex. It's a great read. It's a great read. And if you want to get into the classics, this is a great place to start. Next is a classic of sorts, not necessarily the book, but the movie is considered one of the greatest films of all time, and that is The Godfather, the book being by Mario Puzo. I love this book. I love the movies too, but this book is incredible. It's basically, the movies are great adaptations, I'll say. This just goes a bit deeper. So if you watch The Godfather and you're like, man, these characters are crazy, I want to know even more about them, read The Godfather. It is An incredible story. If you don't know what this is about, I don't know what to tell you. It's about the mafia. It's about a bunch of families, particularly one that are very much involved in the mafia, and it's about multiple generations as well. It's an epic family story at the heart of it, and it's also about America. It's also about evil and good and the weird blurred lines that exist there. The book is just as good as the movies, and that says a lot because, like I said, the movies are considered some of the greatest of all time. So read this. I know the movies are great. Just read the book too. It's so amazing. The audiobook is excellent as well. I don't know the guy who reads it, but he's in Criminal Minds. I'll put his picture right here. It's this guy. He reads it. He does a great job. Listen to the audiobook. Switching it up completely, we have a YA book that is so freaking underrated. It's called Winger. It's by Andrew Smith. This is a book for fans of Perks of Being a Wallflower and The Catcher in the Rye. It's like an interesting mix of the both, but like with way more humor. It's just absurd how hilarious this book is. I've read it twice, but it's been a while since I've read it, so I do feel the need to reread it. But it's about a 14-year-old who is super smart and goes to this academy, and he skipped a handful of grades, so I believe he's either a junior or a senior, and he's younger than everybody else in his class. Maybe he's even 13. I think he's 14. Yeah. So he skipped some grades, and so he still has kind of like that lower level of maturity, but he wants to be mature and cool, and he's also really smart. And he's on the rugby team, and it's just such an interesting book. There are some things about this story that will surprise you. I don't want to tell you what. I want you to read it. But if you want a book that is hilarious, but also so moving, and is just very innovative with how it does storytelling. There's a lot of like weird drawings in here, and it's just really a book that is full of surprises. So read this. It's so good. We're gonna do one more. I don't know what. Give me a second. I'll figure it out. Okay, I have one. I like short story collections a lot lately, and this is one I've been thinking about a lot. Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory by Raphael Bob Waxberg. He's the creator of BoJack Horseman. Cool stuff. Yeah, this is a really interesting short story collection. It is a lot of things. You know, it's hard to categorize. The genre is short story collections because each one is so vastly different. You have some that are real life situations that are really weird and funny and just strange. This guy just really shoots for the stars with this collection. So you've got some regular situations, like you've got some like kind of sci-fi stories, but not like really literary sci-fi ones, but like just kind of odd, off the wall TV show type scenarios. But in each one, he examines humanity, he examines mental health, he examines ambitions and dreams and relationships and love, and it's a really interesting collection because it's not like super ambitious. In a lot of these short story collections that I read, especially with like sci-fi angles and things like that, like I'm talking like this guy or Ken Liu, they're just like so complex in some ways that like it's more about the ideas, but this is more about the heart. Each story here is so fascinating. There's some really funny stories, there's some really moving stories, and it's one that I never knew what was going to happen next. It was really unpredictable, and that was something I really enjoyed. This is one of the first short story collections that I really loved, and I recommend it. It's got a lot going for it. I feel like there's at least a couple stories in here that you're going to love, and that's why I love short story collections so much, is because you can read the whole collection, and a couple of them can be standouts, and one can just blow your mind, and that makes it worth it. That one short story that just sticks with you for so long, and this has a couple of those, so highly recommend. Okay, that's it for this video. Like I said, I did not plan this. I just kind of stood up and filmed it. I'm tired and not feeling great still, so you're going to have to take it for what it is, but I will be back with more not scripted, I don't script, but planned content very soon. I just wanted to get something out there for you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed, if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books. I recommend all of them, like I said, and hope you read them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.